Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Regina Ciarleglio, and I am the Director of Membership at Jewelers of America. I'm pleased to welcome you to the latest episode of My Next Question, National Jeweler and Jewelers of America's co-branded webinar series. Today, Lenore Fedow and I are co-hosting a session on what jewelers need to know about insurance, and this will be with Carrie Volp, Vice President of Commercial Lines Operations at Jewelers Mutual, and Andrew Chipman, Vice President at Berkley Asset Protection. Before we get the webinar started, I wanted to let attendees know that if they have a question, they can type it into the Zoom Q&A box. I will be back at the end of the discussion to share the questions. Also, today's session is being recorded and will be available on the National Jeweler website by the end of the week. Now, I will hand it over to my colleague Lenore to get the discussion started, and I'll be back to field any questions at the end. Thank you.
Hello, thank you, Regina, and thank you, Carrie and Andrew, for joining us. So we called in the insurance experts today because that's what we're going to be talking about. I'm going to start off with the basics before we get into all the intricacies. I'm going to start with Andrew. What is a jeweler's block policy?
That's great. Thanks, Lenore. Thanks for Regina and Lenore for hosting this wonderful opportunity to share more about insurance with everybody, and good to share some time with Carrie. So hopefully we can provide everybody on the call today with some useful information. In response to your question about what a jeweler's block policy is that it's a specific policy for the jewelry industry. And it's a very comprehensive policy. It covers many different perils that can affect a jewelry business that wouldn't be covered under other types of insurance policies. So burglaries, robberies, are some of the big things, shipping losses, trade shows. It's a comprehensive policy that protects jewelry property and protects jewelers' livelihoods.
Gotcha. So this is insurance tailored specifically to jewelers. That's what that means.
Absolutely. Specifically for the jewelry industry, whether you're a retailer, wholesaler, manufacturer, anybody who's in that jewelry industry and has jewelry to protect, the jeweler's block policy is the way to go.
Gotcha. So now, to my understanding, you have your core policy and then you have some add-ons. So what would you recommend a jeweler has as part of their core insurance coverage? We can start with Carrie.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Great to be spending some time with you. Important, in addition to that jeweler's block policy, to also consider coverage for your business property, I think is the first one. So look around your location and everything there, it really should be insured. Everything from furniture and fixtures to computers to all the supplies that you have in your business. That's really, really important. Another consideration that you really should make sure your policy includes is loss of income coverage. So if anything should ever happen to your location, there's a fire, there's water damage, and it requires you to be closed, your loss of income coverage will fill just that gap, your loss of income, and it will help with your continuing expense. So that's really critical to have. The other thing that I would also consider having, which a lot of times you'll see your property coverage and your loss of income coverage packaged together, along with your liability, is an umbrella policy. So you kind of have your block policy, your property policies, and then you'll have an umbrella. Think of just what an umbrella does. It covers everything over the top. So should you have anything just really catastrophic happen, it's another layer of coverage above your property coverages that will help in that instance. And hopefully it never ever happens, but it's very reasonable generally from a cost perspective, and something that if you need it is very, very helpful.
So I know that both of your companies offer various add-ons on top of the core policies and the things that you've mentioned. What are some add-ons that you would recommend? Whoever wants to take that first.
I'll dive in. I think, Carrie brought up some great things to consider in addition to the jeweler's block policy specific to items that you can add to a jeweler's block policy. There's several coverages that sometimes when you're talking with jewelers out there, they're not aware that these coverages are even possible to add to a jeweler's block policy or to a package policy. Things such as appraisal liability, really protecting yourself if you're providing appraisals to the general public. And if something is to go south in an estate type of planning, divorce settlement, if there's been some type of error with an appraisal, you can have coverage for appraisal liability, which has really been beneficial for a lot of jewelers over the years. In addition to that, there's other things. It's a common coverage to have coverage for workmanship coverage. So if you have a bench jeweler doing work on customers' goods and there's some type of mishap, there can be coverage for that. There can be coverage for actual money on premise if you need to have coverage for that. Coverage for your show windows, whether they're open or closed at night, you can have coverage for those types of things. Lastly, I would just say is if you are memoing jewelry to other jewelers, other people in the trade, even to photo shoots and those types of things, and entrusting jewelry to other people, you can get coverage for that. Protect yourself in the event that something happens to that jewelry while it's at that other person's premise or while they're taking care of that. That's a really good peace of mind to have, especially with all the crazy things that we've been seeing in the last few years. So a lot of different add-ons that you can have a really good conversation with your insurance agent, with your insurance company to make sure that you're fully covered.
Yeah, Andrew hit on almost my entire list, but a couple others. Yeah, a couple others I'd consider adding in. Some carriers will offer either on their own or through a partnership with another company an equipment breakdown coverage. And that's a really great coverage to have if you have all that kind of repair equipment, like a laser welder, for example, or even like your air conditioning systems, your furnace systems. It can cover that, and it really does just that. If it has a breakdown, there's a special policy that can provide some coverage there. I think you all can appreciate all of those systems are really, really expensive. And so it's a great add-on to consider. The other one that can be helpful as well, employment practices liability coverage. So this is a liability coverage, not property, but it can help in the event of claims that arise from employment practices. So hiring, firing, and all of that normal kind of day-to-day employee things that can happen. That's a good coverage to have. It can protect both the liability or the legal defense costs and then the first party costs as well. So those are a couple I would add in there.
Gotcha. Those are all great recommendations. We are just a little while away from the Vegas shows. So I want to talk to you both a little bit about trade show specific coverage. So what protections do you all offer there?
Yeah, I can dive in. So this is really, whether it's a trade show or traveling off premise just in the normal course of your business, really important to have a conversation with your agent or your broker around what those are. Trade show coverage can be very easily added to policies for, at the beginning of your policy term, if you know which shows you're going to and you provide a list, they can all be added at once. They can be added as the show comes up. But it's really, really important for your agent, broker, and then your company to understand where you will be traveling and what shows you'll be attending, what kind of inventory you'll be taking, and the dates you'll be going there. And if you have a standard set of shows that you go to all the time, great. Those can be rolled into your policy. They can just from year over year stay on your policy. And then I would just recommend making sure that the limits are still adequate. But again, if there's a one-off that you're going to, that generally can be added very easily as well.
I would just add to that, all great points. I would just add to that, if you look at trade shows from an historical context, specifically the Vegas trade shows, I would venture to guess that a lot of people didn't even venture to buy coverage for them because they were historically so safe, and they still are. And I would defer to Carrie what she's seen on her side, but I know that we specifically have really seen an uptick in trade show losses over the last 3 to 4 years, just like with a lot of other different types of perils that we're seeing out there. So what I would really recommend to people is, if you've kind of relied on that notion of nothing ever happens at trade shows, I would strongly suggest talking with your agent, talking with other jewelers, because there have been incidents out there. And again, they're still safe to attend, but I think that having additional insurance protection gives you that peace of mind that that can be very beneficial in today's world, where there have been some of those losses in the last few years.
Yeah, I'll just concur with everything Andrew just said. I think the trade shows themselves historically have been safe, but I think it was earlier this year, some of you may have seen the article about the show in England that was shut down due to some badge forging. That is certainly like happening. We're seeing, I think, shows themselves have more attempts at those types of crimes. And so again, I will say by far and large, very, very safe. Some of the critical points are when you're leaving the shows and when you are away from that trade show floor. So I'll just say, in addition to insurance, be safe. We certainly have safety and security training free to the industry out there that I would recommend anyone can take and use. Also, I'll just say at some of the shows, so Luxury and Couture, and then also Centurion, we offer showcase coverage. So, and it's available to anyone exhibiting at the show. So if that's something you can take advantage of too. It's just provided as a service to the industry, but extra caution when you're at trade shows. Everything is elevated. The risks are elevated, the values are elevated, and absolutely have that conversation with your broker and agent about your coverage for trade shows.
Sorry,
Yeah.
just one last point to that, if you don't mind. You know, I think if Carrie and I could, it'd be lovely to spend one-on-one time with every jeweler that was going to a trade show to really reinforce some of these things. One thing that I would reinforce for anybody that happens to be out there, if you are one of those jewelers that has been traveling with jewelry instead of sending it via armored car to the shows, everybody's got their own protocols that they're going to do. The only thing that I would just continue to stress is, when you're leaving a trade show with jewelry on your body in a bag, just know that you are a target, and diligence is got to be top priority when you're leaving the show. I can't stress that enough. Forget about the property. We're just talking about basic life safety, so if I could convince anybody of doing anything, is just don't leave a trade show with jewelry.
Yeah, totally agree with everything Andrew just said. 100%.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely be mindful of that, and certainly better safe than sorry when it comes to your trade show coverage. So that had reminded me, actually, I hosted a webinar about insurance last year, and we had Andrew with us. And I remember at the time I brought up this story that was recent then, but there was a heist of a Brinks armored truck, and there were jewels stolen out of the back of the truck that were on their way to a trade show. And I remember that some of the jewelers that were affected had run into this issue that they had underinsured their goods. And now they were not going to get back what they felt that they should have gotten back. So can you all talk about the risk of underinsuring your goods?
Yeah, I think one of the prime examples, I'll go back to the point Andrew just made about life safety. So if you choose to carry out of a trade show, or just, in the normal course of your business, and you are underinsured, I think you are putting yourself absolutely at risk, you have a tendency to want to protect that merchandise that you have because you know you may be over your limits. And from a life safety perspective, I just think it's not worth the risk. In the additional premium that you're going to pay to have adequate limits, you're really taking a risk with your life safety. I think the other thing is everyone in this industry works so hard to build what they have. And insurance is meant, it's a large expense. I will absolutely acknowledge that. But insurance is meant to be just that. It is your insurance policy for if something catastrophic happens. If you are underinsuring, you're putting all those years at risk, and the continuance of your business, the brand that you've built with your business and your customers is at risk. And from my perspective, it's just something where it's a gamble I would not want to take, especially when you think about customers, vendors, and what everyone works so hard to build. So in my mind, I think that's where that relationship with your broker, your agent becomes so critically important. That's a key piece of that renewal every year. What is your inventory? What are you traveling with? And do you have adequate limits? I can't tell everyone to do. If I could have everyone insure adequately, I absolutely would recommend that. But it's just such a risk in my mind of having inadequate values. It's really one I wouldn't take.
It's really interesting, right? I think, if you have a conversation with an insurance agent and an insurance company that know what they're doing, I think what most people would be really shocked by is if they just buy the limit that they truly need. I think they'd be really amazed that the additional cost is, I won't say peanuts, but it's in the overall scheme of things, not as if it's going to break your bank. And at the end of the day, none of us can predict what's going to happen in the future, next month, tomorrow, in the next hour. And so if you've already taken that step of insuring some of your goods for, I think a very little ratio of additional premium, you can be fully protected. And I think that peace of mind, just as Carrie said, you've worked your whole life to build up a very, a very important thing to your livelihood. Don't let it go to chance just because you cheaped out just to have a smaller limit than you needed. So.
Yeah, I mean, those are fair points. I mean, when you consider what's at stake, that may not be worth it to do. I'm going to backtrack a little bit to talking about add-ons again. Now, you all cover things that jewelers may not think about or may not think that you do cover. What are some things that your policies can cover that may surprise jewelers? Whoever wants to take that first.
Andrew, you want to take a shot?
Yeah, sure. I take a crack at it. Again, I would just go back to the way I would tackle this one is having a conversation with your insurance agent. And again, knowing that you have an insurance agent that is well-versed in jeweler's block insurance, but really explain to them the key parts of your business. And I think then in that conversation, the items will come up that you will make sure that you have the coverage that you need, or if you know that it's possible. For example, if you work as a retailer and part of your sales technique is having people wear jewelry to show it to customers as part of that sales process. Any tried and true insurance company that specializes in jeweler's block can provide wearing coverage. It's excluded right out of the gate unless you're working with an insurance company that kind of knows the business and is either automatically providing some wearing coverage or can add it as part of that overall discussion. It's the little things like that kind of let you know that you're insuring your livelihood to people that know the business. So, I think wearing is a really interesting one that comes up. Other things that come up that, again, maybe people are aware of it, maybe people don't. And, Carrie already mentioned it. If you're traveling outside of your store with jewelry, again, you need to have specific coverage to that. And, you need to make sure that you're have that adequate limit of insurance when you leave your premise with that jewelry. And that's something that Jewelers Mutual and Berkley can do with very little issues. And just a couple of questions, and we can send you on your way so that you're protected in those kind of cases. So I think it's more just a matter of getting together with an insurance agent that knows jeweler's block and making sure that they're working with a jeweler's block insurance company that, has been doing this for a few years and has people that know what they're talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
Carrie?
Yeah, I'll echo everything Andrew said. I think one of the things, in addition to travel, anytime you're taking stuff off premises, like you mentioned, super important to make sure you've explained what you're doing and you understand how often you're out, how much you're carrying, who's carrying, who's wearing. Those are all really important questions. Sitting down with the right broker or agent, they will ask you all those questions and walk through the vulnerabilities in your business. I think one of the most interesting things we run into is, like, I will call it event or trunk show coverage. So you will have, one of your favorite vendors come in, or one of your favorite suppliers, and they'll bring extra things, or they'll bring their new line, or they will, whatever, curate something for you and your special customers. We do that all the time. We make sure that you've got the right inventory limits. We will even consult with, like, what's the proper security, how to bring the merchandise in, how to make sure it leaves appropriately, whether that's an armored carrier or some type of shipping coverage. And then what do you need while you have this extra merchandise? Do you need a guard? Do you need extra people on the sales floor? What does that look like? So in my mind, it's not always about just the insurance coverage. It's about the consultative approach that, to Andrew's point, companies that have been in this business and that have been doing it a long time know we need to provide, because it's more than just a dollar on a paper or on a policy. It's also, how can we provide that coverage for security and safety as well, in addition to the right insurance limits. That's where the combination of your insurance advisor and a great company are so important. And that's one of the things that I think goes beyond insurance that always amazes me, that companies are really good at, that get the industry, is just that we understand what the policy needs, but we also understand what those additional things and advice look like to create more of an experience and that safety net that's needed when you're thinking about insurance.
As Carrie was talking, she brought up the trunk shows, which I think is something that, a lot of jewelers don't necessarily think of about getting coverage for. One of the items that we haven't really brought up to this point, and it, kind of references back to your question, Lenore, of what can people get coverage for that they may not think about. One thing that we haven't talked about is shipping, and if there was anything that we could ask jewelers to rethink the whole process on in terms of getting coverage for shipping, or coverage for anything, I would say shipping would be one of those things. And what I mean by that is if anybody's followed the shipping industry, starting in 2020 to now, the likelihood of having a missing shipment, especially when you're sending jewelry, has increased dramatically. It's almost an epidemic. And I try not to be over dramatic, but shipping's a real issue right now in this country. And so I think that we, Jewelers Mutual, obviously we can provide coverage for shipping, but what I'm asking jewelers to rethink is working with partners like Jewelers Mutual Shipping Solutions. And there's other ones that are out there too, but working with people that are dedicated to making sure that there's an extra set of eyes on your shipping to get it from point A to point B, and listening to them when they tell you that while it's possible to do something a certain way, you're better off, following more secure protocols. And I think that as we move forward in this industry, the days of just dropping something into a FedEx or a UPS box and, hope and pray that it gets to its destination, I do see that needing to have a bit of a rethink. People need to work more with JM Shipping Solutions, or there's other ones out there, but I think that there's a real value add there, and in something that people should strongly consider.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I mean, just from personal experience, I have packages stolen from outside of my building all the time. And luckily it's not jewelry, but it's a common occurrence. So that's a
Yeah.
fair point.
Absolutely.
So I saw this question come up in the chat here. We cover all sorts of crime stories at National Jeweler, and I've noticed we've started to hear more about cybercrime. I remember writing about a jeweler who lost almost $2 million in a day because someone gained access to their bank accounts. And it's just such a horrible, devastating thing. Can you all tell me more about your cybersecurity related protections?
Sure. I'll start, and then Andrew, we can tag team. So we offer a cyber product through like a partner, but usually we just attach it to a policy because it's so critical to have that coverage. And we've actually in recent years not only attached it, but we've also upped the limits. We started out with $100,000 limit. We've gone to 250 as kind of the base, but you can also buy up. So you can buy up to $1 million in coverage. And what does it do? Well, it does a ton of different things. So it can help with anything from a denial of service attack to network issues, to also if you have a breach, like a data breach of customer information, we can help with the monitoring that's required after that breach and also the restoration. It can also provide some personal protection for the principals of the business from that perspective. So it's a pretty broad coverage. It's generally pretty reasonable. And to your point, Lenore, with these happening more and more frequently, very, very important. So I will also say that the policies are very different. You can have a cyber standalone. You can have one that's kind of packaged in with your normal business. So making sure that those needs, that the needs are understood. This is another place where your insurance advisor is really critical. So they understand how you're operating, what systems you're using, how you're storing information. That's all really, really critical. And then they can get the right package in place for you. But absolutely something I strongly encourage everyone to have, and we absolutely offer that. Andrew, anything to add?
Not much. We don't play a lot in the cyberspace. We have it as we offer a supplement on our GL policies that we write, but I would defer to Carrie on that, and just I think she went through that really well.
Sure. So now we've spoken about a lot of different options, lots of things you should be considering about your insurance coverage. What do you feel like is the biggest mistake business owners make when they choose their insurance policies?
It's a really good question. I don't know if I can narrow it down to one, but I think one of the biggest issues is, and you mentioned it before we talked about it, either no insurance or underinsurance. It's just so absolutely critical to protecting your business. And I've spent some time in the claims world, and I have seen some pretty awful things happen. And just having that policy is such a peace of mind. It's kind of your key to continuing your business as it's operating now into the future. Skimping on that, in my mind, is probably the biggest mistake. I understand I'm in the insurance world, and so I think it's important, but it's just so critical. It's a critical piece of your business operations. You just can't go without it.
I would add a couple things to it. I think that I think that the save 10% or more, by quoting with another company that you see with a lot of different car carriers out there, homeowners, insurance companies. I get it. It appeals to the masses. There's a certain marketing stick to it that makes sense. I would tell you that I don't think that that translates to the jeweler's block industry. I think that you see a lot of people moving between carriers to save, a couple $100. And I get it with inflation, cost of gold going up, all these things. There's an immense amount of pressure on everyone's businesses. But what I would ask is that you think for a second that the jeweler's block insurance world is a fairly small one. There's not thousands of different insurance companies competing to write residential auto policies, residential homeowners policies. And so because that universe is so much smaller, I do think that there's more of a positive view to insureds that are loyal to carriers over the long run, and a definite pronounced willingness to make sure that both sides of the party are looking after one another. Obviously any insurance company worth their salt is going to do right no matter what, but that long-term loyalty, it does play a role in that relationship. And so I would just encourage people to not really be swayed by this, shopping every year just to save a couple $100. I don't know that that's accomplishing the same thing in other avenues of insurance. The other thing I would consider too is and I don't want to spoil one of the coming up questions, but insurance rates, specifically for jeweler's block in general, have been going up over the last few years. There's just no way around that, just because of the amount of crime that there's been. So what I would recommend to people is, I think one of the mistakes is really have a coverage in place for the things that are really going to have a real monetary impact on your business, and try to avoid smaller claims if possible, because I think that loss activity is something that every underwriter is going to take a look at. Again, insureds are entitled to submit whatever claim that they are entitled to. I would just ask that maybe they consider some larger deductibles and those other types of things if price is as much of a concern, and just trying to get them to realize that less losses means that they won't be as heavily scrutinized as somebody who's running loss-free. Just a couple thoughts.
Right. And you had alluded to this a little bit in what you had just said. But in terms of cost, I was wondering, how have prices in general been trending for jewelers' insurance policies? You've said they're going up.
I have. I would just say that we are committed to the jewelry industry. Jewelers Mutual is committed to the jewelry industry. And what's difficult is when we have to increase pricing. Trust me, we don't like that. I know Carrie doesn't like it either. What I wish I could convey to people though, and this is especially for retail jewelers out there right now, is that we have seen unprecedented amounts of crime over the last 3 to 4 years. And in order for us to keep up with providing the service that we need to the jewelry industry, we're left with this, unfortunately. But you name me a state and I can share 2 or 3 really violent examples of just really bad robberies and burglaries that are taking place across this country, compounded with the shipping epidemic that we have right now. And we're trying to make sure that jewelers can still keep doing the business that they've been accustomed to doing, shipping jewelry the way they've been accustomed to doing it. But that has put a pressure on the pricing part of it, unfortunately. We're very cognizant of it. We don't take it lightly, but the crime activity over the last 3 or 4 years has truly been an epidemic. And I think we're all just trying to struggle through that process and hope that we can get our arms around that in the near future.
Yep. Andrew said it really well. The past year has seen the severity of losses is just kind of off the charts. And that absolutely has pressure on rates. In addition, on the property side, inflation, supply chain issues that we've seen, like some of that is starting to even out. Our supply chain issues are starting to kind of resolve, but from an inflation standpoint, things are still a little up in the air on how that's going to land. That all has an impact on rates. In addition, we have seen, because of COVID still many years ago, some filing delays too, which then exacerbates the need for rate because our filings can't get approved. And so things kind of stack up, and then we have rate need as well. So there is a ton going on in the market, and everything you hear about your homeowner and your auto insurance absolutely has similar trends in the jewelry space. But crime is a huge one. Shipping losses are huge. And I would like to come out on the other side of this soon, because to Andrew's point, taking rate is no fun. Again, that's where I think there's strategies you can employ to help that pricing. Insulating that policy from kind of smaller claims helps. Having a clean claims history helps. Even from an underwriter perspective, understanding from a loss prevention and risk management what you're doing at your business, that can help too immensely. Having the right alarm, having the right safe. If we know that, you've removed some of that risk. So there are things that I think can help that rate increase, but it absolutely is real. It is.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's unfortunate, but also understandable. We're at my last question here. And my last one for you is, what do you think is the most important thing jewelers should understand about insurance?
I think the most important thing to understand, or maybe do, Lenore, from my perspective, is ask questions. So insurance is complex. It's hard to understand sometimes. Ask questions about, what if this happens? Do I have the right coverage for this? I have this type of safe. Is this what I need? What do I do when I'm traveling? Like, I think asking those questions of your insurance advisor is really, really important. And being inquisitive about insurance, which sometimes I think is just one more thing everyone has to deal with, it will really help you understand what you need for your business and your risk tolerance. So
I'll share a little anecdote, and maybe it's not fitting, but I think it fits for what we're trying to talk about right now. What I'd like jewelers to think about is something that came up recently. We had a jeweler that we insured, and they had $3 million at a brand new store that they were opening up, and this retailer, and they were asking if they could get by with just a TL30 safe. And there was a pretty long discussion about what that all meant. And there was another carrier that was willing to allow that. What I would hearken back to is that just because somebody says yes doesn't mean that that's the right way to go. I think that it's a very small world with competent jewelers block insurance companies, and sometimes, even though it's not the answer that you necessarily want, you're working with people that are just trying to protect you and your livelihood. And just keep that in mind, that if the jeweler was to pick up the phone and call me or call Carrie, that's what we're here for. I would challenge that for some of these other companies that, this person's, going on to handling their next, hair salon, daycare facility, whatever. Make sure that you're working with people that have the expertise that can really protect the livelihood, even if in that exact moment they're not giving you the answer that you want.
Right. All right. Well, that is it for my questions. I appreciate the both of you for being here. I'm going to turn it over to Regina and see if we have any audience questions that came in.
Yes, we got a couple. The first is, and hopefully I'll be able to, this person had asked that shipping insurance for shipping jewelry. In this person's situation, she said it is not covered if the word repair. So if sending it to, say, Lenore's repair service, is there a way to get around that?
I would just say in general, I don't know all the specifics of this instance, but in general, the advice we always give is avoid anything having to do with jewelry whatsoever on the label. So If it's initials that you can use, if it is an agreement that you have of it's, some other totally random business name, if it's someone's first name, I think all of those are good suggestions. Just avoid at all costs putting anything related to jewelry, gold, silver, repair, diamonds, any of that in the label.
Right. They're just targets. Okay, Andrew, this is for you. What if for an average jeweler, as far as cyber attack coverage, like what is there a minimum amount, or is this something that you have with an umbrella, or say I'm setting up a store and I'm like, okay, I need cyber attack coverage, right? How much do I look for in a limit?
Yeah, that's a great question. I go back to what Carrie said. The mistake that a lot of people fall into with cyber is they think that it's like this one size fits all type of coverage, and it's really not. As Carrie mentioned before, you're talking about things of monitoring, first party notification, damage that you've done to your customer base. But then there's other things. There's things to your actual electronic devices that are on premise. I hate it because insurance, it can be complicated, and it can be a little messy to get through. I'd really stress picking a competent insurance broker, though, that's not focused on price, but is focused on being able to answer your questions to cyber specific and to other things as well, because they'll point you in the direction of making sure that you have the proper amount of cyber protection. For most small businesses, there's $100,000, $200,000 sublimit for cyber that protects you for your customer base if something goes wrong. Does that pass muster? Maybe, probably. But if you're a larger organization, or if you have multiple locations, probably worth having a more in-depth conversation about something like that. Carrie, I have anything else to offer on that, or?
Yeah,
No, I think
I agree.
Yeah, just really talk to your agent, right? That's what they're there for. You guys are specialists in that, right? So exactly. Here is a question. It seems like an easy question, but it never is. Okay, Lenore's Jewelers again. Hi, Lenore. You're our jeweler today. How do you price like that? Like, do you need, like, if I'm coming to you, do I have to give you appraisals on everything, or do you see receipts for what I purchased? How do you know how much coverage to give me?
Yeah, for covered inventory, I'm assuming, Regina, is the question. Yeah.
Yep.
This is really an important one. So your inventory is generally, the things you're holding for sale, customer goods, findings that you may have for repairs, memo goods. So I like to think about it in categories like that. What do you have on memo generally? What do you have in customer goods on average? What do you normally have in your inventory? I would start there. And then I think maybe part of the question too is, how do I value that? Well, there's a price you bought it for, and that's a great starting point. But gold's really high right now. And so do you have a lot of gold in your inventory? There may be an endorsement you can attach to your policy to give you an extra percentage if something happens in a claim settlement. So customer goods as well, like having an agreed value and appropriate take-in procedures when you're taking in that piece, so you understand what you're taking in, the quality, and all of those things is really, really important. And last thing I'll say is, if something should ever happen, having the source documents to help trace that back for your adjuster at time of a loss is really, really critical. So computerized inventory that's up to date, along with some source documents, will really, really be helpful and make that claims process go smoothly should you ever have to go through that.
So,
the
Regina,
next question. Oh, sorry.
Regina, if you
Go
don't
ahead.
mind, you just said something really interesting that I thought was worth commenting upon. You mentioned, well, is it easy or is it not? The thing I find that's interesting about that statement is, as it relates to underwriting a jewelry store or a claim for that matter, right? Is that, I'm really proud of our people. And because of that, that means that there's a thought process behind every decision. And so instead of a jeweler just plugging some numbers in and just having a price spit out at them. Just know that any competent insurance company that specializes in jeweler's block has a person behind that computer screen that's giving that thought to that specific instance, hitting some of the things that Carrie mentioned, but there's a human involved in that interaction. And it's not just garbage in, garbage out, for lack of a better word. And so, again, it's just a real need to work with a carrier that has been doing this business for a while, knows what they're doing, and has competent people making those kind of decisions.
Yeah, no, I think, and it goes back to know your agent. Okay, here's one. It might be a little loaded because, Jewelers Mutual is a very big supporter of Jewelers of America and many of the initiatives we do. So can we talk a little bit about shipping insurance? Because I believe Jewelers Mutual has a really cool deal with the shipping insurance where it doesn't affect the jeweler's block. So Carrie, can you take that for us?
Sure, absolutely. So Andrew mentioned this before, that shipping is it's a huge part of the industry, and things have to get places, customer goods have to get back and forth. And so one of the things that, and it's always been challenging. And so what we did is we have created JM Shipping Solution that allows you to still have insurance, but away from your jeweler's block policy. So should something ever happen, make a claim, and you can buy insurance and freight through the JMSS platform. It also allows you to compare price on with different carriers. So you're not locked into one carrier, you have the option and choice. You also, and you can see your options very easily in our user interface. And then I think the third and fourth selling point. Third selling point is you can pay for your insurance and your freight all in one invoice. So it makes your invoicing and your billing that much easier. And last but not least, we have some loss prevention built into our platform. So the question before about, hey, my label has repair in it and I can't ship. Yep, our platform has some of that loss prevention built in. So it will say, you can't do that. Don't do that. It's too risky. Change your wording, change your delivery recipient on that label. We also, through that loss prevention built into our platform, monitor packages going through the system. So if something is taking too long or it hasn't been delivered yet, we actually have a team working in the background to make sure those packages make it to their destination. And if they don't, we have someone intercept and try to find it. So it's not just a place to like sell shipping or get your things shipped. You also have peace of mind of that loss prevention in the background, both built into our system and then the team working through that, which is a huge benefit.
Great. Thank you very much. That's a good one. Wait a minute. What about Canada? Is now JM, you guys write in Canada as well?
We do write in Canada. However, our shipping platform is US.
Okay. And again, shameless plug for you guys, but one thing also I think you guys were talking about with repair envelopes, when a consumer brings in a piece to get repaired, make sure the piece, you and the consumer properly have the item valued, because you don't want the customer saying, oh, this was blah, 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 blah. So Jewelers of America, another shameless plug, provides those repair envelopes. So you can come right to our site and order them. Here's my favorite question, because it's such a hot topic. What about lab-grown diamonds? I mean, how do we value those, especially for insurance purposes? Is it just do you use your invoice? Do you look at like a type of a replacement coverage? Because that's something that's all over the board in terms of, price fluctuation.
Andrew, I don't know if you want to hit on that a little bit. I'll just say, yeah, go ahead, and then I'll add color commentary.
Yeah, I would just say that when it comes to lab-grown diamonds, when it comes to any type of inventory, right, there are going to be fluctuations in pricing. Okay, so the lab-grown diamonds is kind of easy to talk about right now, just because there's a lot of commentary over that over the last 6 to 12 months. If you and the supplier that you're working with show a downward trend in lab-grown diamonds, the important thing is to reflect what you think the replacement cost is on that, make sure that that's documented in your inventory, that that's what the limit that you're insuring to is, so that you're not overpaying for your insurance. If you think with your supplier that, you know, these are what they're worth, you know, we kind of allow our jewelers to really have that grown-up conversation and ensure what they think that it should be in terms of that replacement piece. So I would just leave that there. You know, I think it's important for us to be there to support the jewelry industry. I don't know if it's for us to dictate that to the insurance agency, to the insurance industry, the jewelry industry. So I think it's a conversation between supplier and the jeweler. You know, and conversely, gold's going up right now, right? So I would encourage people, you know, if they're sitting on a lot of gold in their stores that they've had for the last 12, 24 months, it's probably time to take another inventory, update that cost of gold, and make sure that you're insured on the opposite side for the increased amount of insurance that you're going to need for gold. So the bigger point that I would take away is everything's always fluctuating in price. Lab grown diamonds, gold, silver. Always make sure that you're taking inventory at least every 6 months, a real inventory, and making sure that you're comparing that against what your insurance limit is. Carrie, anything to offer on that?
Yeah, no, Andrew, you hit it on the head. I would just, that inventory is really critical. Taking that inventory is absolutely critical. And then if there needs to be adjustments, those can be done really at any time. So if that's done and you find out, oh gosh, like I do have a lot of gold, or I have, you know, more diamonds because I was able to buy some from one of my suppliers at a discount, or whatever it is, that should be reported to your insurance advisor, and then they can work with your company to figure out what adjustments need to be made. And really, again, it can be done at any time. I think pretty common for people to do it at renewal, obviously, but when we have metal prices going all crazy and lab grown issues and all that, it really can be done at any moment.
Thank you very much. Here's something that I'm just going to put up, just because, you know, I am on Facebook on Jewelers Helping Jewelers. And I noticed today, over the past couple of days, you know, they're posting pictures of a person, of a bad person who's going in and stealing jewelry from stores. So belonging to a network, whether it be Jewelers Helping Jewelers or another one of our participants today, he also sent a message about an alert network with other jewelers in your area, I think is very, very helpful. Sharing images, sharing information. Hey, someone was just here. Again, these are things that we can all do internally to help at least mitigate what is going on. So a couple plugs, that kind of wraps us up for today. A couple plugs though for Jewelers of America. If you are not a member and you would like to join, please do. I would like you to be a member. Very easy, just email members@jewelers.org and we will get in touch with you. Membership is $225 a year. And you get to interact with all these wonderful benefit partners that we bring you on a regular basis. Join us. My next question webinar is going to be preparing for trade show success. And that's actually going to be next month, next May 14th. And that's going to be with Nikia Levesque, and she's the Vice President of Marketing at Days Jewelers, and Jenny O'Calery, and she's the owner of Huntington Jewelers, and Natalie Rodriguez, Director of Marketing at Omi Privé. So that's a month from now. So you have a little time to thing, and that will be hosted by Amanda Gizzi, who is our Director of PR and Events at Jewelers of America, and Michelle Graff, the Editor-in-Chief at National Jeweler. Again, this will be available on Friday. So I would like to thank very much our participants today, everyone who attended, and Carrie and Andrew, thank you very much, and Lenore, thank you. Great information, and you know, who knew we could have so many people on for an insurance webinar. Obviously, it's something everyone wants to know about. Thank you again. Have a lovely day and be safe, everyone.
Thank you guys. Bye-bye.